Welcome to Real Flix Reviews. We're like a book club for people who hate reading. This week it's James's pick, and we're doing the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, made in 1988. This week we have Jonathan Charney, James Stevens,
hello,
and the freak in the lower left-hand corner is Ryan Preston. And we bring you movie news at the end of the program. This week it's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and one of the two miscreants have the little description of it.
I got it here, actually. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, 1988. A tune-hating detective is a cartoon rabbit's only hope to prove his innocence when he is accused of murder. It's like they're trying to explain it to an alien.
Who writes these descriptions? It's like
it's just the most general, like, here's the one bullet point about this movie.
It's like there's a subreddit on Reddit called "Explain Like I'm 5." This reminds me very similar of it.
dude. That's like a horrible description of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, leave it to IMDb just to be as vague as possible.
That's a really bad description.
I did want to say something before we started. James brought it up last week about excuse me. About the different characters of the different characters showing up, and according to
Ryan.
Oh, Ryan. I'm sorry. According to the Bastion of All Wisdom Wikipedia, it was actually Steven Spielberg who convinced Warner Brothers, Fleischer Studios, King's Features Syndicate for Felix the Cat Productions, Turner Entertainment, Universal Pictures, and Lance Production to lend their characters to the movie.
Wow.
They did, however, there were some they couldn't get, like Popeye, Tom and Jerry, Casper the Friendly Ghost, stuff like that.
Really?
But there were some caveats that was interesting, like Donald and Daffy and the piano scene. Yeah. They all had to be able to play the same. They all had to be equal players.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there were some little, you can do this, but you can't do that.
You can't play up Disney over Warner Brothers or Warner Brothers over Disney.
Yeah, they have to be very similar.
That's funny.
You know, and I was actually thinking when I was watching this movie again, how great of a scene that was between Donald and Daffy.
Oh, that was a great scene.
That's like one of the best scenes ever.
I thought the thing I liked about that is it all played to the characters' strengths and the way they were, and it didn't really lessen either character.
And I thought it was great that they also had Betty Boop as a cigarette girl right there.
Right?
Yeah, oh God, that was amazing. And it's perfect because I think that's what she was drawn as.
Well, yeah, she was kind of a risque cartoon for the day.
You know, one of the amazing things to me rewatching this movie 24 years later after it's been made. Now, guys, really, 24 years after this movie is made, how much detail they went into creating these characters into a real-world scenario.
Oh, yeah. They did a lot of work.
Like, even in that scene...
Not even... I mean, how well they mesh together. I mean, you're thinking, I'm going to watch something that they're doing now really well. I'm going to watch them try to attempt to do it 24 years ago. And then you watch it and you're like, holy shit, it's almost just as good.
Yeah.
As anything you would see now as far as the merriment between live action and animation.
Well, I mean, you can even see Jessica Rabbit's hand actually go under Eddie Valiant's coat.
Yeah.
When she's like sitting on his lap and rubbing him and opening up his jacket, grabbing handkerchiefs out of it. There's so much interaction into real world with these characters that they did so well.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the little things like that are going to sell the whole idea of the movie.
Well, they've been doing interaction between composite stuff for a long time, and the Wrath of the Titans and stuff with that. But this one, I think, is when they started getting really well on live action versus cartoon or versus computer generated. Yeah. I think this is when it started noticing how it was just the practical effects really added to it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you could tell there was a big collaboration between the practical effects artists really being in cahoots with the animators, saying, okay, what exactly is going to be going on? Because I want to match that with, like you said, the coat moving or whatever happening. You know.
I was going to say, I was reading. I think it was Wikipedia or somewhere else who was talking about how there was somebody dressed up as Roger the Rabbit in scenes.
Yes, Charles Fleischer was one of the points that I was going to bring up of how dedicated this guy was to his role. and he was the guy who did Roger Rabbit. Not only Roger Rabbit, but also Benny the Cab.
The Cab.
And 2 of the Weasel Gang, Psycho and
nice.
Greasy.
He
did.
Well, I mean, Charles
voice actor.
Fleischer. I mean, one of those, man of 1,000 voices, another Mel Blanc kind of character. I mean, that's how he made his living.
Yeah. Really great. As far as I'm concerned, one of the most underrated voice actors of that era. I mean, he was. Yeah, he, like you said, Mel Blanc. Like, he wasn't put out there as much, but he did a lot of really great voices and very well. But he dressed up in a bunny costume for Hopkins for certain
awesome.
scenes. Yeah,
that must have been surreal for Hoskins.
Yeah,
I mean, to just be standing there looking at the guy who voices Roger Rabbit in a rabbit costume, that would throw me, man.
Well, no, he did it so that when he was talking, when he was in scenes talking to Roger Rabbit,
it was for the camera.
There's a point of reference.
Yeah.
But nowadays they use a tennis ball on a stick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'd be like, God damn it, Charles, can you just stand behind me or something and give me the voice so I don't have to look at you in this crazy rabbit costume? Because I just keep thinking I'm on acid.
The worst thing about this whole thing, though, is Bob Hoskins retired from acting because of Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Because they were going to make 2010. They were going to make a sequel. They were talking about it, and then he retired, and it's just like, I was really bummed.
Yeah, he was a great actor.
Well, I mean, he always has that role. Any movie you've seen him in, he's the one you remember. He's the scene stealer. Yeah. So even in Hook, when he's playing opposite Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams, I mean, every scene that he's in, you're watching him.
Yeah,
Shmi's always the better character.
Yeah, but I mean, he helped in the Peter Pan one, the Neverland that we talked about.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right, yeah, he reprised his role of Smee in the Neverland.
Yeah, which is really great because I mean that would not have made that so good if I mean it was a different Smee.
Everybody over the age of 25 was looking at it like, hey, you guys seeing this? And everybody under the age is like, I don't know what you're pointing at. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's just the guy playing Smee. Who cares?
Yeah, it's okay, Smee. What's the big deal? It's like, anyway, you don't understand. He was Smee before he was Smee, and this is it's kind of stuff meta, bitch. Like, pay attention.
They're wondering what Peter Pan is first.
So besides the actual logistics of this movie, what I just think are fantastic, great, even the cinematography, the colors, everything kind of fits with what the role is. I think even the storyline is really nostalgic. I think it's just a great storyline. I mean, Cloverleaf is taking over the Red Line, and they're trying to get rid of it so that they can bring in the new industrial idea of the freeway. Which, Ryan, I wanted to ask you, I mean, because, Christopher Lloyd's character, Doom, brings up a really great point that, I mean, freeways are going to, get rid of the traffic jams. They're going to be a thing of the past. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, no, see, I'm from Los Angeles, California, where this movie happens to take place. The freeway that they're technically referring to is the 110 freeway. It's called the Arroyo Seco Parkway, and it's the first freeway ever built in the country. And it was really just a quick way to get from, Pasadena, where, the Rose Bowl takes place, down to downtown Los Angeles, because it's all, mountain terrain. But it was just this old crappy waterway that they just put a road on top of, so it's really windy and crappy, and it's one of the most backed up freeways you could ever possibly imagine. I think they just even came out with a poll of worst cities for traffic. I think we were number 2 or 3.
Well, actually, LA would not work the way that New York works. You have to have the freeways because of the fact that
there is no public transportation here anymore. Well, there used to be a small rail car system. I can't remember what it was called, something Angels.
No, he's talking about something.
I'll think of it later. Anyway, but we used to have some kind of version of it. But after the freeways, everybody's buying cars, and unlike New York, LA is really sprawling. It's spread out so far.
Well, you can't live
here without having a car.
There was a idea early in the plans of Southern California where they were going to try to put in a subway system like New York. They were trying to model that idea.
Right.
And it was shot down. And what John doesn't know is that there was actually a system of cars.
Yeah, no, I actually knew that.
That were modeled after San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because they were trying to do it that way, too, and it just wasn't working, and they finally went to freeways.
Well, the interesting thing...
there were more trolleys, but, I mean, they still had a couple of underground ones, but it was just really, really impractical to design it.
Well,
I mean, especially when it's spread all over the place, and everything here is so wacky
well,
as far as the layout.
Well, there was...
Flustered.
There was something...
Oh, yeah, I mean, well, and, everybody who's from LA or been to LA and is familiar with the freeway system, you just think to yourself, like, there had to have been a better way to figure this out.
to get back to the...
And it seemed like they build one, and it's like, oh, okay, now we need to sort of expand this because we kind of screwed up, and it's just like a constant, like laying track in front of the train to stop the problem,
Yeah.
Well, there's to get back to the movie. One thing I thought was really well done is there is the part where the red car gets bought up by Cloverleaf is very parallel to what happened in real life. Yeah. So much so that they made a commission to figure out if it was true, because GM at that point actually had a company that they were actually buying transportation companies. So they could replace things. So that I love when movies tie into real life events to add to the story.
Wait a minute. So
the kernel of truth that sells your bullshit.
Destroyed Toontown?
Of course, GM hates cartoons.
But back to the actual idea of this movie. I mean, for '88. I am just still watching it, and now it's just amazing that 24 years later, that how well this movie still holds up.
Yeah, it hasn't aged.
It's a really amazing thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not like the similar with as much animation and effects like Wrath of the Titans has a lot of stop motion, and that aged horribly within a decade.
Well,
this is 20 years.
What is it?
And
Pete's Dragon?
Yeah, see that's definitely I think that's around 70 something, and that a decade later it really aged. This is 24 years later, and it still looks like it could come out tomorrow and look brand new.
There's only a couple scenes where I noticed like the hand was off just slightly, but that was mostly when he's holding a bulky gun type thing. And to mention today's standards, I mean, we look at something of the lines of the movie that we just did recently, Oz the Great and Powerful, where Franco's handling the China girl. I mean, there's still things where it's like a millimeter off, and you can see that, and that's still transference of this movie made in 1988, where I mean the transference is just still like a millimeter off.
Well, I mean, that goes have an actor who has to be aware of the spatial awareness. You know what I mean? Like, how big is the cup that I'm holding in my hand? That's not really there.
See,
one second. There's an early scene where Bob Hoskins, I keep saying Hopkins, and it's not Hopkins, it's Hoskins. Anyway, he's coming down the stairs and he gets bumped by a hippo in a dress. Yeah. And that part right there, he didn't get bumped by anything. He's coming down the stairs, and as somebody out there, or he just remembers that on this step, I have to give this much space for this hippo that's bumping me. That's not really there. So, I mean, that's just amazing acting ability as far as Hoskins is concerned. That's just fantastic.
No, I agree.
So, I mean...
I love how all the like when Eddie Valiant, played by Bob Hoskins, is talking to a cartoon character, how you can actually see they're looking at each other, and the way the camera work is and the animation, it generally, like 99% of the time, it lines up perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that it always seemed amazing to me, is they really do look like they're interacting, and between the way they made it look like 1947. Everything is really well done. And that's why I think one of the reasons it aged so well is it doesn't take place in 1988.
Yeah, and another thing is, Ryan, did you see this one in theaters?
No, I didn't. I was probably 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, come on. I'm going to have to talk with your parents. Ryan.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I ended up getting it on video a couple of years later.
Yeah, John, you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. And I'm talking with Jen, and she's my wife, and she's sitting there and just kind of like, she doesn't want Allie, our daughter, to see this yet. She doesn't want her to see it because there's so much sexual references, kind of innuendos.
See, kids don't. Has she seen?
Because the patty cake scene.
Well, I was kind of joking with her, going, "You want to play patty cake later?"
Well, here's my question: has Allie seen Shrek?
Yeah.
Shrek is 1,000 times worse than this movie because you got stuff like Farquaad. Oh, I think he's making up for something.
Yeah,
this movie is nowhere near as bad as modern day cartoons.
I agree, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, I saw this when I was at a young age, and she's kind of like, well, there's this burlesque scene where she's dancing and singing and kind of getting up on them, and I'm like, even still, that's like, it doesn't register.
There's no frame of reference.
There's no frame of reference. James, it's always been the same thing. There's always been. They still do it to this day. They make these movies that have these jokes that adults get, but are really ambiguous towards kids. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand that that's the joke.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So, or that's something that's a little slightly risque, like that scene you're talking about. But they've done it forever. They still do it today, like you said with Shrek. Yeah. There's jokes that just fly right over the heads of kids that the adults are going to get. And then there's things also in there that are just for the kids that the adults are going to kind of, passively maybe giggle at or something.
See, I think the burlesque scene is even more ambiguous because there's a child you have no frame of reference. It looks like somebody's singing.
Exactly.
As an adult, you realize, okay, this is a little risque. Shrek,
you have context for it.
Well, yeah, on Shrek, on the other hand, it's very apparent. If you're a kid past the age of 8, you get what they're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a movie that I really enjoyed as a kid. I love this movie. I mean, you got so many different characters. You have Dumbo early that kids recognize. You've got the Fantasia
James,
guys.
What about all the fantasy elements? How many kids, which is pretty much everybody who's ever seen this movie, has wanted to take the black hole dot and throw it against the wall?
Exactly, just like the cop did. He's like, yeah, look at.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, I want to play with everything in there. To this day, I'm almost 30, dude, and I'll watch that movie to this day and be like, God damn it, I want one of those black dots.
Like, I love
and one of those hammers with the fist that comes out.
Two of my favorite scenes in that movie. It's the same scene, but where he's stuck behind the magnet, so he uses the black hole and the middle of the magnet disappears.
Yeah.
And when he busts out the singing sword, it's witchcraft. He's like looking at the sword, going
Sinatra.
Yeah, and he's going crap.
You know what I find is funny is that if you look at the IMDb of that, they actually go, it's Frank Sinatra archived.
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
I want my bullets to talk to me.
Duh.
What?
Oh yeah.
I said I want my bullets to talk to me.
Yeah.
Now I try to do it to the. I was gonna do it when I watched it recently. Is try to read the whole thing, but that's from Yosemite Sam. The gun.
Really?
Is it?
Yeah, that's what I think it said on there. I have to go back and look, but it looked like it was from Yosemite Sam gave him the gun.
Really?
Right on.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty freaking cool. How much detail they went into it. I would love to have that gun, and I'm still pissed off that he had 2 bullets left and threw the whole gun down.
Yeah, that bummed me out. Especially because they were like alive and then just sitting in there.
Yeah. According to this Disney Wiki article, it says it's unknown to exactly when Yosemite gave the gun to Eddie after the death of Eddie's brother Teddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I caught it. I caught it while it was playing. I read as much as I could, and it said from Yosemite Sam.
That's awesome.
So yeah, which is kind of funny because then he walks up and Yosemite Sam doesn't even say, "Hey, what's up, Eddie?" But he goes, "My biscuits are burning. My biscuits are burning."
This was also the first time you had Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse in the same scene together ever. First time, and it's probably the last time it's happened since.
It is the last time. You'll never see that again. Because obviously, at a time when a lot of these things were, in '88, Warner Brothers' heyday, or what they assumed was their heyday, was 40 years behind them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same thing with Disney. They had, some stuff coming out, a few years later they'd start making their Aladdins and whatnot. But I mean, a lot of their things were from the 70s and and a little bit later.
Which is funny because
I imagine it was not a long conversation with Steven Spielberg, like you said, to talk him into, hey, let's get all these characters at once. It'll remind everybody about all these awesome cartoons. We'll make it a little self-aware. And I'm sure people went out and bought them, but nowadays they'll never do it just because every single one of those characters, with just the advent of the internet, is at a complete premium.
Yeah. But you also see that they kind of turned it around after this movie, and I mean, you got the Looney Tunes came back on, and then they turned into Animaniacs. I mean, how great was that show?
Best, Steven Spielberg. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, but there's a lot of banter between Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse, which I thought was pretty funny because those were the two dominant characters of both of those studios.
Yeah, they're the face of the studios.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you drive in LA, I mean, around Burbank and where like Disney Studios are, and every single fence post is in the shape of Disney's head, or in Mickey's head. I mean,
yeah. Then you look at the end where I mean, even Porky the Pig, was that's all, folks.
I thought that was amazing.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, ratings, guys.
I'll go first. I'll give this a 5. Just because it's one of the movies that no matter where it is, I'll still watch it. It still transports me to one time I was a kid, and you still catch stuff that you never noticed before, whether it's small details or it's certain comments, or certain historical background, like with a red line. Overall, it's an awesome movie. I still enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
Ryan?
I'm going to give it a 5, but for a really specific reason. 4 stars are all because of just my favorite parts. And like you said, anytime this is on TV, I don't give a shit what part it is. I'm going to watch the rest of it. The reason it gets to a 5 is because the way that it holds up. When you see characters like Roger Rabbit or Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck or any of these characters, the way that you've always consumed those characters has been 2D in a cartoon. So when you see them in this movie, they're still presented to you as the 2D drawn animation cartoon. So it holds up forever because that's exactly how they're supposed to look, even if they're in a live action world. You know what I mean? Like it's so perfect the way that worked out that no matter 100 years from now, you could watch it and be like, oh, well, of course that doesn't look crappy because that's what Roger Rabbit would look like if he was in the real world, a 2D animated character. So, just that evergreen quality to it is an immediate 5. And Christopher Lloyd, I love in this movie so damn much.
Such a wacky character he plays.
Yeah.
What about you?
This movie, I've probably been about 8 years since I've seen it. Something like that. Probably right when I got it, I watched it when I bought the first disc. And, even watching it now, it's like I can quote practically almost the whole movie, and that speaks for itself alone. And it's just a straight out early 5. I mean, I could watch this over and over again, and I plan on having my kids watch this movie.
Well, yeah, it's definitely one of those, like, you haven't seen that movie, stop what you're doing and get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Doesn't matter who you're talking to.
Yeah. So,
and just to say, now with the movie news portion of the show, and this week it's James's turn to scour the internet or his sources.
Or at least the first couple of pages of IMDb news.
Actually, I didn't quite do that. What I pretty much did was I just went
secrets.
and got on. I hopped on there and I looked at a couple things. And did you just? Oh, it did it to me.
Dun dun dun.
Anyway, well, I lost one of my movie news. I'll come back to that. So, first things first is you guys have totally ruined this part, but since both of you were like, "Oh, I can't believe Margaret Thatcher is dead." Ding dong, the witch is dead.
Well, I never said I can't believe it. I
She was 80 years old. I mean,
now, guys, I don't know if you guys out there know who Margaret Thatcher is. You probably got some of you guys watching.
I swear to God, you better know who Margaret. I mean, just use it as a pop culture reference.
What? Video
I'm
nasties.
just talking to our audience. Like, you guys better know who Margaret Thatcher is.
But she was there for a decade.
Yeah, she was pretty much, if you wanted to watch a movie that would really entertain you, you looked at the one that she didn't like.
Right. Find the filmmakers that were actively trying to piss off Margaret Thatcher, and there's your gold.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's pretty much how you found them. You guys out there probably don't know this term. If you don't, look it up. It's called a video nasty.
Yeah, it's a really specific thing, too.
Yes. It really is a specific thing, and they're not bad movies, and I'm actually, I think her death is timely, considering that Evil Dead was released like a day or two before.
Why it was that was that one of her.
It came out on Friday. Yeah, that was one of the ones that she stuck on the video nasty list early.
I didn't actually know that.
She tried to ban it in the UK. Now, Ryan, you want to bust out a little history on the video nasty, or should I?
A general breakdown is like I said, it's a real specific thing, but it's specific to England mostly, or the UK. Essentially, the idea was Margaret Thatcher and maybe various other people, and correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, James, but I'll nutshell it. Basically said, here's a list of the things we don't like in movies and the stuff that we don't want to have released, kind of thing. And then a handful of people were like, oh, okay, so this is a list of shit to do then.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then they made those movies. Like, we're gonna go down this list one by one, break every one of these rules.
Yeah, pretty much. What was going on in the UK early when movies came out? They were the basically the B flick horror movies.
Yeah,
were coming out.
That's what I should specify.
60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. They were trying to kind of push the budget. They were going down out into Brazil and those areas, and they were creating these movies, and they were pretty much pushing it on the verge of like snuff films, like Cannibal Holocaust.
Cannibal Holocaust, so I think, was one of them.
A big one.
So here, I do have a list of some of them, if you're curious.
Okay. No, not really. I'm just going to kind of continue, and you can do the list after. And pretty much what Margaret Thatcher was in the UK, she actually was came up with this video nasty list and put it up to the Parliament, and saying that these are things that we don't want our kids watching, because then they're going to think that violence is a good thing and go out and kill people. Now, so what they did was they pretty much went to every mom and pop video store and started showing them this list and saying, all these movies that you have out right there need to come with us, and we're going to destroy them. Now, the thing is everybody on these video nasty lists, they had people watching these movies to find out if they were bad. So they pretty much were screening all the movies that were going in the UK, and she was trying to get that to happen here as well. And we pretty much looked at her and said, nope. So
yeah, we have this thing called freedom of speech.
Yeah. For a little while longer, I assume.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I mean, literally, like, she was trying to tell people what you can watch and what you can't watch.
Mm-hmm. Right, based on just the idea of appropriate. What's appropriate? It's like lady, I'm pretty sure individuals can decide for themselves what's appropriate.
Yeah, and I mean, they pretty much have sat there and tried to force this down people's throats. And like Ryan said, they pretty much turned it. All these guys that own video stores started having like back rooms,
and they started getting bootlegged. I mean,
in her defense,
back in the day, bootlegging wasn't downloading something on the internet. It was, I have two VHS players. VHS were those box tapes that had the wind up thing. Look it up. And you'd have two of them, and you'd be recording one onto the other, make a couple of tapes, and pass them out to your friends.
Yeah.
And I mean, this happened for years. So there's all these, blank, unmarked tapes, with a Sharpie title on it, passed around for years and years, with all those titles.
Yeah. So Margaret Thatcher was pretty much this lady who was trying to force moralism on everybody.
But in
was
effect,
just annoying. Shut up.
Well, in her defense, these were
in effect. pushed it the other direction, pushed art even further, the other direction.
We're not going to let you talk, Don. We're not going to let you talk, Don.
I'll mute both of you fuckers. In her defense, they weren't exactly the world's greatest movies either, because you got movies like
Driller Killer.
Well, yeah, you've got movies like The Cannibal Man, Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Flix, Cannibal Apocalypse, The Burning, Blood Feast.
Nazi torture room or something.
I forget. So these weren't great movies, but they were still a film. Still an artistic style that people enjoyed that they just didn't like for whatever reason.
But my thing is that you have to be 18 to rent those. Some of the guys probably aren't going to check your ID. Enforce the law you already got.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come up with another one, and do not try to legislate moralism. It's not going to work.
And it's asinine to think that you can have a law, not enforce that law, and then make another law because you weren't able to enforce that law. You know what I mean? It's just going to be a perpetuating cycle of you not enforcing anything.
Yeah. So anyway, well, you know what? I'm just going to move on from this because we can go on and on and on about this. But just so you guys out there, it's. I'm not rejoicing at this woman's death. What I'm just saying is that, the things that she did were not wise.
Oh, come on. You were standing up and dancing earlier.
Don't tell my secret. So, a couple of weeks ago, I discussed Eli Roth and Hemlock Grove, the movie Hemlock Grove or whatever, or the show that he's putting out. Pretty much a torn werewolf or whatever. Anyway, I told you guys I was going to keep you updated on where it was going to be, if it was Showtime, HBO, whatever. It's actually a Netflix show.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
So that's where it's going to be. I think it might be coming out pretty soon, but they have the House of Cards.
Is it just like one season?
I don't know how many seasons.
Well, they're. I think taking a page out of AMC's book, FX. People that it's like, okay, look, we got X amount of money, and it's nowhere near what ABC or CBS or these major studios have. So let's take the little resources we have and give them to people who are extremely talented.
Yeah,
and Netflix is starting to do the same thing, and putting money behind people that know what they're doing, giving them creative control.
Yeah,
the coolest. And then I also like what they're doing. Also, is they put out an entire season at once. Like the day that it comes out, that whole season is available.
That's what I was going to say.
So you can sit there and watch one after another, the way people usually like to consume shit on Netflix.
Yeah. So they've got a couple shows on there. I've heard good things about House of Cards. It's not something I'm very interested in. I'm not into political dramas. And Lords of Salem is being released this month on the 19th. It's already been released out in Europe, but it hasn't been released here in the States yet.
Should I nod and pretend like I know what that is?
Yeah.
You have no idea what that is?
No.
Apparently not.
Oh my gosh, that's Rob Zombie's daughter. That's the movie that he wrote and produced, and he's putting it out. It's starring his daughter.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, it's a chick.
It's a Rob Zombie film, though?
Yeah, it's only got a 5.7 rating on IMDb, but it's a Rob Zombie flick.
Well,
so it's not going to get high rating.
Weren't exactly critically acclaimed, but I mean, talk about a cult following.
Yeah. So, and I'm I got a big following of Zombie. I like him. I like.
After House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects,
and also the remake of
Halloween.
Yeah.
I love the fact on the poster that she has that weird thing on her head and dreads. So she's definitely his daughter.
It's one of those movies that it's not. I'm not expecting a lot, but it seems like it's going to be pretty cool. It's basically like witches went underground in Salem during the massacre, and then they came back, and they were kind of speaking to his daughter, who's a radio DJ. Blah 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 blah.
So hold on, here's IMDb. Here's the IMDb description, which is hilarious. Heidi, a radio DJ, is sent a box containing a record, a gift from the Lords. The sounds within the grooves trigger flashbacks of her town's violent past. Is Heidi going mad, or are the Lords back to take revenge on Salem?
Yeah.
It definitely sounds like it's up Zombie's aisle.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a fantastic movie, but
I've been
one that I've been waiting for.
It's going to be violent.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I expect from Zombie.
Corpses, blood, random plot twists.
Yeah. So,
a gigolo in there somewhere.
Stumbled across this movie. I know John's a big fan of Channing Tatum, and Ryan has a cult following over Fox. But
okay.
I stumbled across this movie. I hadn't heard anything. Have you guys heard of this movie, White House Down?
It sounds very familiar.
I haven't heard of this.
No, but go ahead.
Well, isn't there a movie?
No, hold on. I want you guys to hear the description from IMDb. I stumbled across this movie, and I'm like, this is not going to happen.
I almost want to write down what I think it is and seal it in an envelope just to see if I'm right.
So, this is the description, and I'm already laughing because I'm like, did they even pay attention to politics these days? Because the first sentence isn't going to happen. Well, on a tour of the White House.
He doesn't get it. Because of the sequester, they stopped White House tours.
Yeah.
A little backstory there for you.
Yeah. Anyway, well, on a tour of the White House with his young daughter, a Capitol policeman springs into action to save his child and protect the president from a heavily armed group of paramilitary invaders.
Well, isn't this very similar to the Olympus Has Fallen?
I was thinking this is pretty much they took the plot from any of the Lethal Weapons.
Well,
or Diehards.
Diehards, and just kind of threw the White House in there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's pretty much what I was going to write.
And I find it funny
that
that Jamie Foxx is President James Sawyer.
Wow.
Nice.
So he's going to be the Obama.
That's.
But I stumbled across this movie and I'm like, what the heck are they trying to do now? I mean, this is what the crap that Hollywood's putting out?
Well, I mean, it's a cop. It sounds like it's a rip-off
well,
I think
once a year, every studio's got to be like, okay, who's writing our mindless action movie this year?
I mean, that's just such a horrible, stupid plot that, I mean, Jamie Foxx, I respect you.
No, you don't.
After Ray?
You just respect him for that movie. I mean, come on, tell the truth.
Nah, The Soloist was okay.
Yeah, Ray, Soloist, and Django. And Collateral wasn't bad either.
Yeah. So, I mean, he does have some good things on him. I mean, I haven't heard him come out and be like all the other stupid celebrities and hop out and say their political view, but, I didn't hear anything. But, maybe I just ignored it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, is your career falling apart that much that you hop on this?
So,
maybe it's just something fun to do.
Is it his Catwoman?
See, I mean, if I was an actor, I would do something like that just to check it off the bucket list. Like, I have to do this crazy large action movie. I don't think
Halle Berry had a good role before that.
Well, the question, Halle Berry, I think, she had Swordfish, which was a great role for her.
My gosh! Here, let me take my top off for you guys.
I thought her character in Swordfish was pretty good.
Her character in Swordfish was okay, but then she had to take her top off, and then you just respect goes down.
And the best part of that movie was about the first 4 minutes.
See, I loved Swordfish because I love John Travolta as a bad guy.
I mean, I was the only one in theater yelling, "Do it again!"
Yeah.
What, being hung?
No, the first 4 minutes of that movie where the bomb goes off and.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was a pretty good cinematography and special effects in that scene.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, just do that part again.
Yeah, can I just see that in slow mo replay a couple times?
Yeah,
it's just like I did with the last few minutes of the movie Titanic. I think I watched Leo drown for 2 hours. Rewind, play.
But, I mean, I don't know if this is going to be his Catwoman, but I mean, it's just really, I mean, you go from Dango to President James Sawyer.
And it's a rip. It sounds like a direct rip off of Olympus Has Fallen, which is already out.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's come to the end of our show. Except, Ryan, what's your pick for next week?
Oh, yeah, we got to do that.
What?
Huh?
Who? Anyway,
so what's your pick?
The one that I picked, and I think this is James and I got talking about this, and I think that's when we decided to do the animation week, because I was I pretty much told him, like, I don't give a shit when I get to do it. I got to do this movie as soon as I can, because I was just that excited after I finished watching it the first time. I'm doing Batman: The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and Part 2. Both came out 2012. starring Peter Weller, who you might know as RoboCop, and directed by Jay Oliva, and written by Bob Goodman and Bob Kane, who's been doing Batman forever. So yeah, part 1 and part 2, you can find them, probably Amazon, iTunes, probably got the download. But yeah, check that one.
So what was it called again?
Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, part 1 and part 2. It's the animated version. It's not Dark Knight Rises, the Christopher Nolan. It's an animated Dark Knight Returns.
So ladies and
It's based on the Frank Miller graphic novel, the 4-issue graphic novel from back in the day. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, they'll be looking forward to seeing this.
So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you find that for next week's show. This week we gave Roger Rabbit the rare hat trick. That's all 5 from everybody on the show. And we'll see you next week.